Yeah, it's so good to be with you. And Gina and Sam, thank you for your awesome work and your comments. I love your partnership, your thought maker partnership. My wife and I have something similar going on, and it's so good. Actually, Gina, if you need encouragement and challenge, well, how about this wall? You know, I believe in art's patronage. We need to recover it. So.
Someone else here would not like that, but I like it.
All right. Well, if you need encouragement from the outside to make something like that happen, let me know. Sam, if you called that talk a throwaway track, like I have no idea what mine is. Demo track, maybe B-side. I don't know. But yeah, I do want to do two portions of this. The first portion is just apologetic for beauty. Beauty is not, well, it's coming back. It's having a resurgence, which is very exciting to me, but had for a while been very denigrated in the arts community, even in the church and elsewhere. And so I want to talk a little bit about beauty, a little more theoretical level, and then get into what does it look like to craft well-placed, fitting works of art, the beauty of a well-placed artwork, which hopefully will be an encouragement to you as artists, but also, if you're not an artist, that's totally fine as well, of course, because we need good art receivers as well, and so hopefully that will be encouragement on that side. As a theologian, I feel like I'm supposed to define what beauty is, but unfortunately that gets us into lots of trouble. That's part of the problem with discussions a lot of times with beauty is as soon as you define something, someone's like, that's not what beauty is. And then you get all wrapped up in disagreement. There is a time to define beauty, but I would like to just show the impact of beauty. Beauty is oxygen. Beauty is necessary. That's what I want to show you. And, I think sometimes not defining something can be helpful. I learned this from Catholic theologian G.K. Chesterton. He has this wonderful book called Orthodoxy, and he wrote that the morbid logician seeks to make everything lucid and succeeds in making everything mysterious. The mystic allows one thing to be mysterious, and everything becomes lucid. So I guess what my invitation is when it comes to beauty is to just allow beauty to remain mysterious. And if we do so, we may experience, Chesterton has another great phrase, he calls it splendid confusion. You can experience splendid confusion in light of beauty, of encountering this sacred mystery. But here's what we do need to learn how to do with beauty. There is a time to define it. That's okay. I'm not going to do that today. But we need to learn how to tell and inhabit the story of God in a beauty-first way, in a beauty-centric way. We're used to doing this in a truth-centric way, I think, and sometimes in a morality-centric way. But what about beauty? Just in terms of telling the story, might go something like this. In the beginning was beauty, and beauty was with God, and beauty was God. Through beauty, all things were breathed into being. In beauty was oxygen for all. Infinite beauty was revealed in galaxies, blood vessels, trees. With one special breath, beauty gave life to human beings in beauty. Beauty began to swirl and play in 10,000 places. Despite all this, humanity rejected their dependence on beauty. They wanted a beauty they could control and consume, a beauty they could enjoy on their own terms, a beauty they could use to make a name for themselves. They channeled the beauty of the earth into production, the beauty of artistry into idols, and the beauty of humans into objects. But beauty cannot be life and oxygen for our souls as a product, an idol, or an object. Beauty can only be life and oxygen for us as gift, sacrament, and presence. Beauty is not a thing to be used, purchased, or achieved. Beauty must be encountered, witnessed, and received. So the invitation is to belong to beauty just as beauty belongs to the world. The invitation is to breathe in and be with beauty just as beauty became flesh to breathe and be with us. But to do so requires new breath within dry bones, a new heart, and a new lungs for taking in beauty as oxygen. It requires really for beauty to breathe on us in a whole new way. And we could go on, but this is a beauty-centric or a beauty-first way of thinking about the story. And notice how beauty does come first in the story. God created the heavens and the earth, and he looked at all he had made, and he saw that it was exceedingly true, exceedingly good, maybe. Don't love that translation of tov. Exceedingly tov is the word in Hebrew, tov meod. It was abundantly delightful. It was exceedingly beautiful. It was deeply pleasing. God saw all that he had made, and it was astonishing. Beauty first. Why? Because creation is the overflow of the beauty that is God. Creation is the overflow of the beauty that is God. And as image bearers of God, we come fully alive. We flourish as image bearers of God when we encounter God and all of the beautiful things that God has made. And when we respond to all of that beauty in worship and wonder, receptivity, gratitude. So we need to receive and respond to beauty to experience the fullness of life that God wants us to experience, to come fully alive as God intended. But as we know, all is not well. We live in this now and not yet time. That's the way things were supposed to be, but receiving and responding to beauty is often not our default posture in the world. We have this innate tendency to twist beauty, to channel it toward self-serving ends. And then in each cultural environment, there's these unique dynamics that make a beauty-first life challenging. I think in 21st century America, one of the biggest challenges, and Sam alluded to this with the imminent frame, a little more practical way of putting that is there is this atmosphere of meh. Meh. You know this word? Yeah, it's in the dictionary now. LARF. Okay. Now it is. So meh, M-E-H, it was invented in a Simpsons TV show. And it verbalizes this malaise that Sam mentioned that just permeates every aspect of life, our work life, leisure life, family life, spiritual life. And this growing sense of meh is connected to this inability for many living in our secular age to perceive any overarching sense of meaning, any purpose, any sort of sacred time, sacred place, and certainly not a transcendent God who is active and present, working in the world and in our lives. So it's up to us then to forge a way, to find some kind of meaning. And when all of that effort just gets exhausting, or when we just don't care enough, what we're left with is meh. Because what is there, right? And among that meh experience of life, though, there often does exist a desire for more, an ache for purpose, this longing to experience genuine awe and wonder. I love how the novelist Julian Barnes expressed it in the first line of his book, Nothing to be Frightened of. It's an incredible book. The main character opens the book by saying, I don't believe in God, but I miss him. That's the ache. I don't believe in God. But I miss him. You have that combination of thoughts and desires. And I think few works of art portray this better than the 1999 film American Beauty. Raise your hand if you've seen this film. Most of you, okay. It's been a while for me, but so I was remembering this, and I think it's a great example because so you have the Burnham family, kind of typical middle-class American family. Seems like they have everything that they want, but everybody feels meh in this film, okay? And they're searching for meaning in the malaise, which means Lester, the dad, he quits his corporate job, he buys his dream car, he fuels his obsession with the high school cheerleader, and in the meantime, his wife Carolyn has an affair, their daughter Jane pursues a relationship with Ricky, their obsessive weed-dealing neighbor, and like anything is permissible. They're searching for that meaning, but chaos ensues. And beauty in this story becomes this thing that they're all trying to consume. They're all trying to get beauty in this futile attempt to ease that ache that they have in their gut. And so Ricky, the one person who seems attentive to beauty, is ridiculed as mentally ill, especially when he claims to see beauty in a dead bird or a floating plastic bag. In this, I love this scene. So he's sharing his footage of this plastic bag that's going in the wind with Jane. And he's searching haltingly for these words to describe the experience. He says, it was one of those days when it's a minute away from snowing, and there's this electricity in the air. You can almost hear it. And this bag was just dancing with me, like a little kid begging me to play with it. It helps me remember, I need to remember, sometimes there's just so much beauty in the world. I feel like I can't take it, and my heart is going to cave in. So there's this theme in the movie of beauty's out there, beauty's encountering them, but they don't know what to do with it. They don't have a capacity for it. Even Lester, at the end of the movie, he's expressing this cross pressure, this ache, and he reflects back on his life, and he's saying, it's hard to stay mad when there's so much beauty in the world. Sometimes I feel like I'm seeing it all at once, and it's just too much. My heart fills up like a balloon that's about to burst. So Ricky, my heart feels like it's going to cave in. Lester feels like my heart's going to burst. So both Lester and Ricky are experiencing beauty as oxygen, but it takes them to the brink of annihilation. They can't breathe in genuine beauty without facing this fundamental incapacity. So what then are the options? You got this option to turn inward. We see this in the film, to embrace the meaninglessness, to rely on various modes of escape and entertainment to get us through. I think of, I don't have a slide presentation for this talk, but if you look up the 90th anniversary edition of The New Yorker, there's a bunch of them probably, but there's one of the covers, there's this guy who's holding a phone, and his body's kind of curved over it, and there's a butterfly floating over his head. You know, and for me, that's a perfect illustration, this physical curvature of our spines, hunched over our devices. Well, that literally is a way of just missing beauty in the world, right? But that is a metaphor for our spiritual postures, of this innate condition that we have of being curved inward. And the essential problem that illustration is showing it's not technology, right? Technology is not the root of the problem, but that curved nature, that buffered condition, this spiritual posture that we have that limits, just like this limits our capacity to breathe, right? So that curved spiritual posture limits the capacity for our souls to breathe in what we need for life. But beauty in all of its forms has the potential to liberate us through the action of God into a more expansive, porous, breathable life. But there's only so much beauty that we can receive without a fundamental unselfing, without this fundamental transformation of our postures. We need this new heart so that our old heart won't cave in or burst like those characters in American Beauty. We need new lungs, to stick with this metaphor of beauty as oxygen, to breathe in beauty as we are meant to breathe in beauty so that we can have life. And the good news, of course, is that God gives us this gift in the gospel, gives this freely to those who turn from self-centeredness and who trust that God is the center of the story and who turn from that malaise and embrace the gift of God and his beauty. Then beauty can be oxygen for our souls. And like oxygen, beauty is everywhere. It's why I love this image, this metaphor. And it permeates our life through every sense. So I love the statement in Ecclesiastes, God has made everything beautiful in its time. Everything. It's the challenge for, if we want to talk about what beauty is and where is beauty, it may be obvious how beauty is present in a beautiful sunset like we had last night, or in symphonies, or in beautiful spaces. But beauty is also mixed up in the muddle and in the rubble of our lives. The poet Christian Wyman writes, God goes belonging to every riven thing. God goes belonging to every riven thing. It's an amazing poem. You need to read the whole thing. But if that's true, and if God is beauty, then God's beauty also goes belonging to every riven thing. And I really like that idea for several reasons, a couple reasons. One, this is God's beauty, so it takes beauty beyond the subjective. It's not just my perspective on beauty. God's beauty goes belonging. So it takes beauty beyond the subjective. It takes beauty beyond the static. God's beauty goes. It's on the move. It's constantly arriving. God is constantly encountering us through beauty. And that means beauty is not something we can predict or control. It takes beauty beyond the abstract. God's beauty goes belonging to particular people, the thingness of things, right? It belongs to people. It belongs to things, beings, processes, objects. And it takes beauty beyond the pleasant as well. God's beauty goes belonging to every riven thing. It goes belonging to this broken creation, broken people, and to all riven creatures. Again, beauty is everywhere. Beauty is there in a Van Gogh painting and in that flowering weed in the sidewalk crack that I saw out here when I walked in. It's there in a Bach cantata, yes, but also in my child who is currently singing slightly off tune. It's beautiful. It's like, ooh, it's a beauty that hurts, Beauty is there in the poetry of the Psalms and in a well-meaning but misspelled birthday card I got the other day. Beauty is there in the vintage reserve saved for a special occasion and in kombucha in a mid-century modern glass. Beauty is there in ferocious storms and flickering fireflies, straight and kinky hair, representational and abstract art, wrinkled faces and smooth ones, praise and lament. It's everywhere. God's beauty goes belonging to every riven thing. And that also means that beauty is not something that we can pin down, we can dissect, or easily fathom. There's this mystery to it, which can be both wonderful and challenging. I love Dostoevsky's novel, The Brothers Karamazov. And we have this confession in this novel, Mitya to Alyosha. Beauty is a terrible and awful thing. It's terrible because it has not been fathomed and never can be fathomed. For God sets us nothing but riddles. Or as the contemporary artist and writer Makoto Fujimura says, sometimes beauty is hidden and silent. Sometimes, or in fact, often, he argues, beauty emerges through sacrifice. Beauty can be terrifying because it's unpredictable, unsolvable, and cruciform. Cruciform. So we could riff off Mr. Beaver and his description of Aslan in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that beauty is good, but it's not safe. Right? Beauty is good, but it's not safe. It isn't tame. And there's an elusiveness to beauty that can be frustrating. And there's disagreements about what is beautiful that can be confusing. But the mystery of beauty is liberating, I think, because it invites us to be humble and invites us to be dependent. That if beauty is not a thing to be grasped or possessed or controlled, then all we can do is receive it as a gift, to be channels and conduits, and also to be encountered by it. And when we do so, I think that the mystery of beauty can save our lives. I really believe that's true. That saying is often attributed to Dostoevsky, a different novel from The Idiot. But it's important in context in that novel. It's not actually what's said, beauty will save the world. In context, there's this question that's coming from a character named Ippolit, and he's confronting the protagonist, Prince Mishkin, and he asks, "Is it true, Prince, that you once said that the world will be saved by beauty?" So Ippolit he's a young atheist. He's dying from tuberculosis, and he's surmising that the prince only believes in the salvific power of beauty because he's in love. Okay, so he's challenging this idea. But then he tries again from a different angle, and he says, okay, what sort of beauty will save the world? That's his question. And I love it. And actually, in the story, the prince doesn't respond to the question. He just lets the riddle of beauty's power, salvific power, just stand and remain unanswered. But I love that revised question of what sort of beauty will save the world. And I think that's the right question. Because if beauty will save the world, including you and I, then we need to clarify what we mean by beauty and what we mean by saved, right? Saved from despair, saved from decay and death itself. And so I think it's important to talk about that two different ways. On the one hand, I do think it's fitting to talk about the power of natural and artistic beauty to save us from meaningless, despairing, meh experiences in this life, okay? So I think that's what, for example, the poet Mary Oliver meant in this wonderful interview she has with Krista Tippett. She says, I got saved by poetry. I got saved by the beauty of the world. And what I think she means by that is that despite a really difficult childhood, the beauty of the woods and then the beauty of words gave her life purpose and inspired her to bring even more beauty into the world, which she has done in her gorgeous poetry and essays. You know, I've experienced that too. I grew up on 160 acres in Minnesota, central Minnesota, and I had a spot in the woods. It was up behind our house. We called it Scenic Slope. You go to the top, and there's this big chunk of granite. And I didn't have nearly the traumatic childhood that Mary Oliver did, but sometimes I needed to escape from the house, you know, and I would go up to that rock, and being there and being in that place and taking in the beauty there, it felt like being saved by beauty for me. But just like for that day, you know, just for that time in my life. And so this is a conversation, I think, that's very accessible to anyone, no matter their faith background, no matter their faith commitments. We can talk about the power of beauty in this way. That beauty won't magically erase trauma and pain, but it can give strength for today. Beauty won't eliminate injustice, but it can provide hope beyond current circumstances. Beauty won't ease all the tensions of this buffered meh life, but it can introduce a sense of wonder and enchantment as this bridge to the sacred. And in that sense, we can talk about how beauty can save any person at any time in that finite sense. And every time it does, the world feels just a little bit brighter and a little bit lighter. and artistic beauty can have the same impact. And so even if art by itself can't, save the world from its ultimate demise, it can save people from apathy and from resignation and from that mehness. So one more thing on that, and then I'll tell you about the other way that beauty saves. I love this poem by Erica Jong. It's Jong is her name. And the poem is called On Picking Up My Pen Again. And she expresses this tension between what, in this case, poetic beauty can and cannot do. She says, no poem will unwrite lawsuits, unseat senators, or unbribe judges. If you and I and all the poets in the world write poems hourly, no cancer will ungrow, no bullet will boomerang and hit its maker. And yet I know the world is not God's fault, it's ours. We write poems as leaves give oxygen so we can breathe. So it's super powerful, and I think she's right. In other words, the beauty of the earth and human artistry can save our lives in temporal ways and just help us breathe. However, only God can save the world from ultimate tragedy. And if God is beauty, then yes, beauty will ultimately save the world as well. The world will be saved by beauty, by a beauty that is beyond the world, but entered the world, even entered hell, before being raised triumphant over the forces of ugliness and evil. So the beauty that will save the world in an ultimate sense is so deeply mysterious because it's eternal and incarnate. It's cruciform and it's victorious. It's God's action in Christ by the Spirit that will save the world. And I think all other forms of beauty are all participating in that ultimate form of beauty. But you have a temporal sense in which beauty saves, and you have an infinite sense in which beauty saves. And both of these are the kind of beauty that entices us to believe and that moves us beyond the suffocating boundary of a self-centered life into a life of wonder and grace and joy and more creativity. So I do believe that beauty is oxygen, and I believe that there is more than enough to go around and that we can encounter it everywhere. And I talk about a lot of practical examples in the book, but maybe it could be good just to pause here just for a moment, see what questions you have so far. We can talk about some of those practical ways of breathing in beauty, but I kind of want to just pause, take an actual breath, and have some interaction, and then I can move into the other section. So you've got a mic there, Dwight, so yeah, let's have a little bit of interaction on this topic.
Any question or comments? There we go.
Loved your talk. I know I came in a little bit late. I have 2 kids, but I was just wondering, as well as with your book, like, what are some of your favorite authors to read in regards to like the arts and being like a Christian artist and all of that?
Oh, there's so many. It's really hard for me to pinpoint, just a few. But I quoted from Makoto Fujimura. I really appreciate his work, both his artistic work and the books that he's writing. So he initially published a book called Refractions, which is kind of a collection of his blog posts, which is really good. But more recently, he has a book called Art and Faith. It's a theology of making. But a lesser-known book that I mentioned kind of obliquely was an extended reflection on silence, the novel. And it's called Beauty and Silence, and he's wrestling through how do we reconcile beauty and suffering, and beauty through silence or absence, as much as beauty as presence and gift. Really, really good. On the music side, I point people to Jeremy Begbie. He's at Duke. He's doing the best work in integrating theology and music. In terms of literature, oh man, there's so many. But I've been really influenced by Annie Dillard, as well as some more kind of fringe voices. It's like, where are they in terms of Christian commitment? I'm not sure. But even like Mary Oliver, incredibly powerful. But I can recommend more offline too. That's a good place to start. Yeah.
Very cool. Good question. Good answer, of course. And Silence also being the Martin Scorsese film based on the book.
Yes.
This isn't so much a question as much as an observation. Just what really struck me when you were talking about beauty as being oxygen and something you need to breathe in and breathe out. It's just part of our being and our needing that. I mean, what struck me was, as a musician, the need to be able to praise and worship the Lord, or else the rocks are gonna cry out. And so it was just, when you said that, it was just really striking for me that I've never thought about taking beauty in and needing it like oxygen, like the need to worship. So thank you for that.
Yeah, one of the things I'm trying to challenge is a popular view, particularly in Christian circles, that beauty it's a luxury, it's an add-on, it's more like perfume than it is like oxygen. So trying to challenge some of that perspective. And to encourage daily, practical rhythms for taking in beauty. And one literally involves oxygen, which are breath prayers. So something that I do, I pray the portions of the day and some other things where I try to be attentive to beauty. But I do breath prayers like before I'm entering a meeting. I'll say, Lord of all beauty, help me see beauty in this place. So you address God on the inhale, God of creation or whatever it may be, and then on the exhale, it's a word of thanks or it's a word of help or please. That can really help me pay attention to the beauty that is already there, right? Because part of our task as sub-creators is to bring more beauty in the world, but that's always and only a response to the beauty that's already there. So even if it like something as ordinary as a meeting, the beauty of the Spirit's energy in that place, the beauty of the people, and it might be a tough meeting, but there's always beauty to be attentive to, and that will reorient your attention and your practices, I promise you. Yeah.
Is there one more? Yeah.
I'm curious if you have, tips or suggestions on raising kids who value beauty. Anything you maybe specifically do in your home to cultivate that?
Get them outside. Whenever I complain, I have a whole chapter on boredom in the book. It's part of the malaise, Think of Father John Misty's "Bored in the USA" song that he sings. But whenever I complained as boredom as a kid, parents are like, either I have this miraculously replenished to-do list for you, like the widow's jar, or go outside, which doesn't always automatically help kids encounter beauty, but most often it does. And I talk about wonder as the diaphragm of, it's what keeps us able to actually breathe in beauty, this wonder muscle. And I've found that the greater proximity you can have to God's initial form of beauty in creation, the more that wonder muscle will be strengthened. So give it 20 minutes, and the bramble in the alley is now a castle. No boys allowed. The bugs become a little museum on the front porch. $1 admission, and and I try to enter in with my kids in that sort of imaginative play where we can encounter the beauty that's there, the bramble, the bugs, the clouds, and then we make games out of it. We respond to it with our own creativity. And also encouraging every form of making and doodling. Yeah, in church especially when they're getting fidgety. Draw it. Write a poem. Yeah. Good. Well, I transition to the second portion.